Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Engineering Influence, a podcast by the American Council of Engineering Companies. I'm pleased to be joined by Kathy Renzetti, Executive Director of DiscoverE. We're here to talk about Engineering Week of 2025. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi, Patrick. Thanks. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, thanks for joining us. As we think about Engineering Week, why is Engineering Week so important to DiscoverE? And can you give our viewers background on how it was created?
Sure. It actually goes back to the 1950s. It's that old. It was a program of the National Society of Professional Engineers originally. And basically at that time in the 50s, they used it as sort of to hold luncheons and dinners and awards celebrations. So it's mostly like within the engineering community. And then about 35 years ago, engineers started to take a look around and said, wow, we don't have enough students pursuing this. We're going to run out of engineers. And that's really when Discover Engineering, came about. So it was sort of a wake-up call, and the engineering societies like the National it's still the National Society of Professional Engineers, the American Society of Civil Engineers, the Mechanical Engineers, ACEC, they all sort of rallied together and thought, well, let's use Engineers Week now as a catalyst, as a call to action to get engineers in classrooms talking to students about what an amazing opportunity and career this is. And we've evolved since then, right? So it wasn't just getting in the classroom, it was how do we talk about engineering that makes it encouraging. So it was the right message in addition to being in the classroom. And then we learned, well, it's not just the right message, it's also having an engaging activity to do with the teacher and the student. And so that it evolved over time, and it's become this magic formula that now we use. All kinds of STEM education, other nonprofits use. So we know what works is bringing that engineer volunteer in a classroom with the teacher, with a student, around some sort of real life hands-on engaging activity. And it sparks all these aha moments. And this is of kids of any age, going back to pre-K all the way up to college.
Very cool. Yeah, as we think about this issue from an ACEC perspective and the immense talent pool that we have representing our firms, how can individuals who are interested in volunteering with Engineering Week get involved?
There are lots of ways. Like I said, just remember that magic formula. It's getting in classrooms or after school or with scouts or 4-H. There's all kinds of opportunities. But working with an educator and a student, having a hands-on activity, and really talking about your job using the right messages. So to your point, like, how do I do that? It all starts locally. So unfortunately, there isn't some national program I could say, oh, go sign up here. You really need to look in your own neighborhood and look at the schools. If you have kids, go to your kids' school. If you don't have kids, check and see if the company you work with has a partnership or relationship with a local school. A lot of times they do. Or it might just mean that you call up the school, you talk to some teachers, but it is different in every location. But there are resources like Discover Engineering. We have resources on our website. We have it's DiscoverE, DISCOVERE.org. And we have resources there it's a tab that says volunteer. If you click on that, it kind of walks you through the things I talked about. How do you reach out to a school? What are the messages you should be talking about? It's very intimidating. I don't know if you've volunteered, Patrick, but going into a school, if you're not a teacher, it's scary. Those kids are smart. So we have the activities on our site, and a lot of nonprofits do have STEM activities if you Google them. But if you go to our site, It's by age group, it's by how much time you have, and all the materials that we use are things you can find in your house. You know,
That's
your toilet paper roll, your paper clips, those
yeah.
kind of things. So it can really walk you through. We have like notes if you're the volunteer, how you go through it, how you talk to the kids. We're trying to make it turnkey. So those resources are available. Other nonprofits have them as well. So it's. I just encourage you to reach out. We find reaching out to teachers is the best way to do it, but it depends really on your school.
Okay, great. I appreciate that information. I know our viewers appreciate it as well. You mentioned in your answer talking about messaging. Is there a theme for this year's Engineering Week that we're quickly approaching? I know it's February 16th is the start date. So
Yes, Engineers Week is every year the same week. It's the same week as George Washington's birthday. So I didn't know if you knew that, Patrick. That's a
I
little
did not know
factoid.
that.
Yes, he is one of the first U.S. engineers. So that is how they tied Engineers Week to that week.
Good to know.
Yeah, a little factoid there. It is this year's theme is build your future. So it's really a call to action to really think about the type of future you want to see. And we try to keep it broad and positive focused, especially when you're going into classrooms and talking to students. It's really inspiring to them to think about, you know, what kind of future do you want? Because really, engineering is about problem solving. So one of the messages we talk about a lot is, you know, students a lot of times think of engineering and they think it's math and science, and that's about it. And that is a part of it. But the bigger part of engineering is really solving problems and really knowing how to think through how to solve pretty big problems and even some simple problems. So there is lots of information on our website talking about messages that resonate with today's students. And it is those types. It's like, you know, engineering is a career that's open to everyone. Or it's all about creating a better future. It's solving problems. So it's the messages that don't resonate are, you know, it's math and science. That typically turns kids away.
You bring up a good point about messaging. I'm curious to get your thoughts. What has been the reception when folks talk about climate change? I know that's on the forefront of a lot of our minds today. And when you think of the solutions in the future, civil engineering has to be a part of that discussion. So can you talk a little bit about how that messaging resonates with students?
It resonates a lot with students. We were concerned, actually. We did a survey a couple years ago of high school students and their parents. And we thought, wow, when we talked to our counterparts at the Royal Academy of Engineering in Great Britain, they had done a lot of research and found a little bit of fatigue among students saying, gee, you know, these are huge problems that are now being handed to us as kids, as the next generation to solve. And they were a little bit fatigued by it and thought, you know, they were pushing back. You know, this is just too big. We found in the U.S. that wasn't the case, that our students were interested in solving problems, and climate change was one of them. And it's really fascinating. DiscoverE, one of the programs that we have, is the Future City competition. Mm-hmm. So, and it's a middle school and high school competition, and we challenge students to design and build a city 100 years in the future. And this year's theme, or last year's theme, was Electrify Your City, and this year's theme is Above the Current. But a lot of the issues are around climate change. And it's amazing what students think about and the problems that they solve that I hadn't even thought of. So they are innate problem solvers, and they are very interested in thinking about the world they are living in now and the world that they want to be living in the future.
That's really great. As I think we both recognize, workforce development, while Engineering Week really highlights the significance of what engineering means to society, how can folks stay engaged throughout the rest of the year? I know there is so much work to be had in this area. So how can people maintain those relationships and encourage more participation?
I'll go back to talking about volunteering. It sounds overwhelming, but if all of us think about it, how we could volunteer, that would go a long way. It's that tipping point theory, right? So if enough people do it and you think locally, and we have seen it does make an impact. Students have aha moments, and we know that we have to reach them as early as fourth grade. And it's sort of their whole progression through early education, middle school, high school, college, and further. We also know that role models and mentors make a huge difference to keep kids engaged, to support them, and they need it, whether it's STEM in general or specifically engineering. So I always go back to think about how you can volunteer, and maybe being a role model or a mentor would work better for you than going in a classroom, which could be very intimidating. But, you could find students in college and in high school and even in workforce to be a role model and mentor, because we also know that's how we can keep them in that pathway. So there's just lots of different things that, if you think of it as a global problem, it's overwhelming. But if you think about things that you can do to reach out to one or two students, or in the workforce, new professionals, young professionals, then it's not so overwhelming. It's something we all can do.
I think that's great to hear. And correct me if I'm wrong, are you saying that folks that might not be licensed engineers can participate in these efforts?
Absolutely. The engineering workforce, it includes technicians. It includes people who have credentials, certifications, and don't have 4-year degrees in engineering, or even higher in engineering. So it's important to really recognize that the engineering community is very large. And the need and demand for both licensed engineered, degreed engineered, and those who are technical professionals, the demand is high, and we know that the pay in a lot of these fields is a lot higher than the average professional in any other field. The latest statistics show that 1 in 3 engineering jobs are going unfilled. I think I just saw a statistic that there's like 60 million jobs for engineering technicians, not 4-year degree engineers, and that number is growing as well. Another recent study that I saw about economic mobility. So they were looking at experiences that will influence economic mobility, which they defined as an increase in salary. And one of the top 3 experiences is having a mentor or role model, and that increased salaries by as much as 25%. So engineering, right, and engineering plays a huge role for people who are looking for economic mobility.
That is great. When people think about workforce development, a lot of folks can be intimidated by the overwhelming magnitude of the size of the challenge facing the industry. In your position, how can we dispel that fear while continuing to raise awareness and engage with the K-12 population?
I think there's tremendous opportunity, so we need to sort of focus on that. We do need to increase our engineering workforce, but that also means there's a lot of opportunity. And if we can present that to students, that here is a huge field, and there is paid. I know when I started in this position, there are so many acronyms for engineering professions. I mean, I don't know, Patrick, there's pages and pages. I don't know if that was shown to you.
I've had that experience. As being new to the industry in many ways, I can relate to those challenges.
Exactly, but that means that there's an engineer for everything. There's agriculture, biological. I mean, there's an engineer to help you figure out food and tastes, and if you're into science and into medicine. I mean, there's any type of engineer you can think. It's not just, a lot of people think of NASA and cars and buildings and construction, but I was just fascinated by the sheer number of the type of engineers that are out there. So there's so much opportunity. If you like solving problems, this is a career for you. And even if you decide that engineering is not for you, it's a skill set that you can take anywhere. It's really understanding the engineering design process and project management. And you can apply those skills to any position that you have. So it's very versatile.
Yes, one thing that I've learned in my discussions with a lot of folks centered around workforce development is the message that a career in engineering, whether it's civil engineering, mechanical, or biomedical, it's a career of lifelong learning. You're continuously learning. And so if people can be inspired by that, I think that will resonate with a lot of young people as they think about their futures.
I think that's something that should, resonate with all of us, that this idea of lifelong learning. And it's really fascinating when you start hearing about all the different engineers now that we're in this field as well. I'm not an engineer, you're not an engineer, but I am fascinated when I meet engineers and I hear about the things that they are doing. Like at Future City, we have engineers come in as judges, so we talk to them all the time. We invite engineers to our monthly Chats with Change Makers series, which is for children, middle school kids. We have a high school host, so he's interviewing engineers, and it's just fascinating the things that they talk about and what you learn.
Yeah. I would be remiss because I know you guys are celebrating the Future Cities winners during E-Week. Before we sign off, do you want to give our viewers a little brief update of what that entails and how you plan to celebrate those students?
Yeah, they all come together. They start arriving the Friday before Engineers Week starts. And then on the 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th, they're all together in Washington, D.C. So we've had regional competitions across the country and in China. And students compete. And the first place team of every region, DiscoverE Engineering, we fly them in, and we host them in DC, and they compete for the national finals. And we have high school students competing. We have 20 high school teams, and we have 37 middle school teams. So they have cash prizes, and the high school teams get scholarship money. So they are judged live. They have essays they've submitted. They bring models of their future city, and they do a presentation in front of a panel of professional engineers or people in the engineering community. So they're presenting live. Wow. It's a big deal, and they're very excited.
Well, I know I will be part of that celebration, so I look forward to it. Kathy, it's been an absolute pleasure having you join us today. Thank you. To those watching, thanks for joining us on another episode of Engineering Influence.
Thanks, Patrick. It was wonderful to be here.
Thank you.